If you're stuck between 5k and 200k per month with your e-commerce brand, I guarantee there's a real reason you cannot break through. Most founders are blindsided by this. They miss the core fundamentals and it quietly kills their growth. In this free training, I'm going to be going and breaking down all of this for you, step by step, real strategies from building real brands so you can understand what's exactly holding you back and learn exactly how to fix this. So within this video, we're going to be going over the 5 fundamental pillars of what is stopping you from achieving the results you want. So if it feels like no matter how hard you work, you can't consistently grow beyond that ceiling, or you're just hitting a consistent brick wall, the truth is there's probably a good reason that you're actually stuck. But it doesn't actually have to stay like that. In this presentation, I'm going to be breaking down and show you exactly how you can fix this so you can unlock new growth within your business. And the best part, it's completely free with literally 0 strings attached. So in this video, I'm going to be delivering insane value for you, and I hope you take this and apply this in your own business. But before we actually dive in, I just want to tell you a little bit about myself. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Chris Bamber, and I've built 3 multi-million-pound e-commerce brands over the last 7 years, which have done collectively over $10 million in sales. So some of the brands of which I've built, Pareil, which the one I'm most known for, was a men's fashion and streetwear brand, Feminine London, which was a woman's handbag and accessory brand, and then there's a few more behind the scenes. So I've scaled multiple brands. I've also failed a lot of times before that, and also rebuilt as well. So I know how brutal it feels to be stuck at the same level, and I can tell you I know exactly what it is that's holding you back. So here are just the brands I've founded, just to give you some more sort of credibility to what I'm actually saying. This is Pareil on the left hand side here, and this was the other brand, Feminine London. And everything I share comes from actually experience of building real brands and facing some of these challenges that you are exactly facing right now. So let's actually dive into the nitty-gritty of what's actually holding you back. Now, one of the main reasons is going to be acquisition and offer related roadblocks. So let's say, for an example, you are a smaller brand. I'm not going to know exactly what your numbers are, but if you are on the lower scale of that, maybe you're on 5, 10k per month. A lot of brands might not be using paid ads. So they're relying on organic traffic methods, maybe influencers, and you can't acquire new customers at scale without actually using paid ads. Paid ads are one of the fastest, most predictable ways to drive actual scalable growth. And if you're not running paid ads, you're losing a lot of money on the table. So the next thing is actually a weak offer and low unit economics. So AOV and LTV, scaling actually stalls if your product offer isn't profitable enough per customer. If you're barely breaking even or losing on a £40 order and you can't afford to actually scale ads, you need to refine your offer, your pricing, and your positioning. Because let's face it, if you have weak unit economics, you're just not going to be able to scale if the margins aren't there. You need at least a good gross margin of 65% plus. We always try and aim for like a 70% gross margin. But if your CAC is so high that you're spending so much money trying to acquire these customers, but you're ultimately not profitable, then you're just not going to be able to scale. So in this video, we're going to uncover that and break down all of these. So the next one is actually not understanding their target audience or offer. So what I mean by this is most brands are too vague with what they're actually selling. The messaging doesn't actually cut through and actually speak to their ideal customer. So let's take, for an example, a clothing brand, for an example. If you are a clothing brand, you just could be catering to the masses and there's no real sort of, brand identity, just trying to sell logos on t-shirts. It's going to be very hard for you to actually find your ideal target customer and really relate to them and get them to buy into your brand. So most brands are actually way too vague. The more specific you can be, the better chance of finding your ideal customer and actually relating to them. The next one is actually the omni-channel presence. But there's no point spreading yourself too thin if you're under 7 figures a year. At this stage, you just need less channels, one channel, and adding too many channels too early is just going to burn your time, your money, and attention. You want to focus on one channel per, say, 1 million in yearly revenue. If you focus on too many channels, you're just going to be spread way too thin and you're not actually mastering one channel. So the next one is lack of creative diversity, angles and output. Most brands actually stall because most brands only run 1 to 2 creatives, they don't do much creative testing, and they're just chucking stuff at the wall and hoping it sticks. So if you're not consistently testing fresh new angles, fresh new creatives, your ads will fatigue very, very fast. And if you're not looking at the data which, Facebook provides you, the data actually is going to tell you everything. And if you don't know how to read it and analyze your metrics, to actually make decisions, you've got a real major problem. And I bet right now, if you're blindly testing with no structure, no framework, and you don't really understand your data, you might just be looking at ROAS and that's it, then you're leaving a lot of money on the table and you're not able to understand where you might be going wrong. So the data is going to tell you everything. The number 3 is actually knowing your numbers, your unit economics. So knowing your numbers is so vital before you actually start spending money on ads. And you need to know your unit economics inside out. This means understanding your break-even CAC, your cost to acquire a customer, your target CPA, your cost per acquisition, and your true margins. So after product cost, shipping, fees, all these costs. And if you don't know these numbers, you're blindly scaling with no clue of actually how much you can spend to acquire new customers profitably. So until you know this, you're kind of like doing a guessing work. You're chucking stuff at the wall. You might not be knowing exactly how much you can spend. And the brands that actually break through know their numbers off by heart and they know how much they can spend to acquire a customer. So to calculate the break-even CPA formula, it's the break-even CPA equals the average order value minus the cost of goods minus the operating costs. So for an example, if your average order value is £100, your product, your shipping, your fees total to £40, you have roughly £60 to left to spend on acquiring that customer. So that is your break-even CPA. Anything under that is profit, and anything over that, you're losing money. So the next real reason is insufficient creative testing and messaging. So what do I actually mean by this? Most people, especially brands stuck between the 50k, 200k per month, even higher, aren't running enough meaningful creative tests. And no, I'm not mentioning about, tweaking some certain colors or making minor adjustments to, image that's very surface level. I'm talking about testing new angles, new hooks, new messaging, and positioning that speaks to these different audiences. So for an example here, I've got a sauna pod. As you can see on the right-hand side, I've just picked this out as a product. And if your ads are targeting people, say for an example, your brand is running for this sauna pod and it's targeting people who are into recovery, and that is your sort of core audience. But your messaging doesn't actually change from this. You're missing out on huge potential pockets of audiences that you may not have targeted, or they may not resonate with your ad. For example, you've got a recovery section. Then you are targeting more health and wellness, or older women who care about longevity and health. Or maybe you have another audience that sort of targets, either weight loss, detox benefits of the sauna. These are separate pockets of audiences where if you change your messaging and change your ad, you can then appeal to that audience and not exclude it with your ad. So you can run the exact same creative asset, but all that needs to change is the messaging behind that, the positioning, and the audience to suddenly unlock entirely new audiences, high converting pockets of buyers who never actually responded to your original ad. And this works over and over again across multiple different products, multiple different niches. And if you're not testing angles like this, then you're not getting the most from your ads, and you're leaving a lot of money on the table. Now, the next one is looking at your data. Your data will tell you everything that you need to know. And if you can't actually analyze your data, then you're going to be leaving a lot of money on the table. Right from your click-through rate to your conversion rate, the numbers never actually lie. But a lot of people get too caught up obsessing over conversion rates, then it doesn't actually really matter too much if you are profitable. Focus on profitability first, focus on the bottom line, and if you're struggling to actually generate sales, here's what the formula might be actually telling you. So if you have a low click-through rate and high cost per click, the possible issue is poor ads or weak product. Now, a low click-through rate means that your users aren't engaging with your ad. So this can come down to poor creative, irrelevant targeting, or just a bad product in general. The audience isn't interested in it, and that is causing you to have low click-through rates and high cost per clicks. And if you're having this, it suggests that your ad is underperforming and you're paying more for each click. So the solution for this is to improve your ad creative and focus on the hook and a grabbing attention within the first 3 seconds. And we measure this by the thumb start ratio. So make sure your product actually resonates with your target audience. If not, there's going to be some explanation of why they're not converting. There may be something down to the offer, the product positioning, or something on your website that's making them not wanting to buy. So run structured A/B tests with different creatives, different hooks and angles to see what actually converts. So the other possible scenario is that you're getting high click-through rates and low cost per clicks. So the possible issue could be down to your website, could be down to the pricing, product issues, or just general confusion about the differences between the ad that they clicked on and the website that they're actually going to. So a high click-through rate means that your ad is working. It's grabbing the attention and driving traffic. But if conversions are still low, the problem is actually happening after the click. This usually means there's a weak landing page experience, website, slow loading times, unclear offer, poor pricing, or there's some sort of disconnect with the product. You can actually find this if you break down on your Facebook ad columns and actually analyze the differences between the cost per add to cart, the cost per conversion, the cost per initiate checkout, and then the cost per conversion. If there is some high imbalances in there, then you know that one of these might be the issue. Whether it's going to checkout, you may have something, that's not working on there, or there's something that's, putting people off, whether it's shipping prices. Usually you can figure this out by looking at the data, and data will never actually lie. So the solution for this is optimize your website for speed, clarity, and user experience. Review your offer, your pricing, and your product positioning. And make sure they actually align with, your audience's expectations and the ad that you're actually running. So if we just go on to the next slide. It's not just about running more ads. So that's where a lot of brands actually get stuck. And if you're stuck, scaling isn't simply about throwing more budget at the problem. It's about fixing these foundations first. So number one, look at your core offers. Is it actually irresistible? Are you relying on weak offers or average margins? Like we mentioned before with the unit economics, you can't scale with bad margins. And if there's a disconnect between, the offer that people actually want versus, the offer that you're giving them, then it's just not going to work. If it's not working, how can you actually increase the LTV and AOV of that order? If you do have low margins, Figure out exactly how you can get that customer coming back, or how you can bump up that margin with selling more products, whether that's upsells, whether that's post-purchase upsells. There's loads of different stuff that you can do that are going to greatly impact your results and your profitability. You might just be breaking even at this moment in time, but one of these changes just sends it over the edge where, you might be profitable on the upsell, on the repeat purchase. So looking at this and looking at your numbers is going to tell you exactly this. So the data is going to tell you, you just need to know how to actually read it. So the next one is actually learning how to craft an ad. Most brands just throw content and hope that it sticks. Yet there's a huge difference between, your brand content and actually direct response ads. Brand content builds the awareness, it builds the brand, it builds the messaging, whereas direct response ads actually sell the product with clear angles, clear hooks, and clear CTAs to drive actual action. If your creatives blur that line, your ads are never going to scale predictably. So there's a difference between brand content and direct response ads. It doesn't mean that, you'd never run these ads for, brand awareness or anything like that, but it just means that there's a difference between crafting a good ad versus brand content. And a lot of brands that start out just seem to, slap product pictures or pictures that they've got from a shoot for the brand and just hope that it works. Whereas, you need to really look at how you're actually crafting this ad. So the next one is, if you're above £1 million per year, then actually looking at the omni-channel diversification. So if Facebook burns out, there's problems with your ad account, do you have backups, and do you have an omni-channel presence? Do you have ads running on TikTok, on Google, YouTube? And this is going to help actually spread the risk. So if one channel goes down, or if one channel is underperforming, then you have all of these different channels that actually work in conjunction with each other and help actually drive these results. So the next one is actually retention-driven acquisition. So how much you can spend to acquire a customer when your LTV is dialed in. So this basically means that looking at your LTV and understanding how many times that customer comes back and buys from you within, say, a 12-month period, and understanding if you have the margins there to actually scale. And let's say, for an example, you're breaking even on first order, but you understand that customer, you may be running a subscription product. That customer is coming back over and over again. Say, for an example, the minimum, average minimum amount of times they're going to spend is probably, maybe 3 times. Then you understand that you're going to recoup that money back on second order, on third order profitability. So more ad spend isn't just the solution when it's not working. It's understanding and actually looking at your systems and looking at your numbers to actually understand how you can actually scale. So I can guarantee that if you are stuck between the 5k and 200k per month, you have an acquisition problem. However, you can't scale without systems and processes in place. It just fundamentally isn't going to work, and something is going to break along the way. So let's actually dive into some systems and processes. So if you are a sort of on the lower end, maybe you're doing, 50k per month, maybe you're doing maybe a little bit more. A one-person show can only grow so far before you actually start hitting a ceiling. In the early days, you're wearing every hat, from the marketing, the customer service, the fulfillment, the product development, all to save costs, but there comes a point where you become the sort of bottleneck of that business. You're doing everything from all of these different things, and you spread so thin that you can't ultimately do one thing well. And this is where you need to actually start looking to outsource and build a team, even if you don't feel ready. This is one of the most important things, is that the smart founders hire into the role before it actually breaks them, not after. And any task that doesn't actually directly drive growth or sales that you do and takes a lot of your time needs to be outsourced. So if we think about the customer support, hiring VAs to do that early on, that should be one of your first tasks. Get rid of customer support, set in place, SOPs, and actually give them a framework to actually follow. So whether this is packing orders, fulfillment, admin, operational tasks, the more you stay buried in that day-to-day, the longer you are going to get stuck, because you're not going to have enough time to focus on the brand, to focus on products, to focus on, the main thing, the acquisition channels like running paid ads. And the more you focus on your time on scaling activities, the faster your brand is going to grow. So I always come up with this, and many other people in the e-commerce space use this sort of rule of thumb, and it's 1 to 2 people per $1 million in revenue generated. So if you are at that sort of mark, you should have maybe a couple people on your team. And if you are, below that, you're just going to have VAs for, outsourcing the customer service, getting all that done and making sure your time isn't spent on, low revenue generating tasks. So let's actually jump on to the next one. So this is something which I missed when I sort of started hiring, and it comes from actually experience and knowing actually why you should do this. So successful founders document their SOPs and processes. So for onboarding new hires or VAs, just having simple processes that they can follow and not having all of your time spent, analyzing, feeling like you never have enough time to talk through everything that they're doing. They're always coming back to you and asking questions. It's because you haven't done this task well. And if you have all these SOPs and processes in place, just like you are starting again from scratch and you are telling yourself how to do it, make sure to document this. And when someone comes on your team, you can then hand the playbook to them so that they can go out and refer back to it if they need to. And then if something, seriously happens that's outside of that, then they can come to you. But having this all documented, whether you do it on, a Loom video or, you have a PDF sort of thing, a guide, having that in place is going to massively help you and massively set the expectations of when someone actually, is hired or one of your VAs is. So if you actually find yourself, you never have enough time in the day, you're constantly stuck on low value tasks, instead of actually focusing on growth, you're wearing too many hats in the business, whether that's marketing, fulfillment, customer service, product development, or you're repeating yourself, micromanaging staff and VAs just to get basic tasks done, or you're struggling to switch off because the business cannot run without you. There's all these different points. That means that the chances are you need to hire or implement some better systems and SOPs. So the brands that actually scale past this point, you can't just hustle out of this. They build structure so that the business runs without them. So you don't want to be glued to every single task. Otherwise, you're going to be tied into that. You're never going to have any time to actually focus on, developing products, pushing the brand forward, focusing on brand identity, and all these different things that actually play a key role. So the next one is what most people don't really talk about. And the one thing is cash flow. So rapid growth is going to suck up your cash. There's no way around this. Many brands hit this wall, not because they can't sell, but because they can't financially facilitate the next stage of scale. So if you are seeing 100, 200K per month in Shopify sales, it feels exciting, it feels like growth, the numbers are climbing, but the bank balance often tells a different story to this. And one of the biggest misconceptions is that, yes, you can be profitable at scale, but if you're constantly reinvesting in inventory, ad spend, growth, it's not going to show up in your bank balance for a while. because you're always investing in, that next level of growth. When you do sell out of stock, you're going to be wanting to order more units than you did last time, and it's never going to actually reflect in that sort of account balance. That's why managing your cash flow, forecasting, and understanding your numbers is so critical if you actually want to scale. So let's actually go on to managing your inventory. So you can't scale without any stock, and your inventory is going to be one of the most common reasons why your brand cannot scale. And if there is demand there and you can't fulfill that demand, there's no point running more ads or anything, because the main core thing is going to be out of stock, and that is your product. So one of the main things that I want to get onto is the 80-20 rule. And 80% of your revenue is likely coming from 20% of your products, your hero sort of items. And not many people look at the data on this. In Shopify, you're going to be able to see breakdowns of this and really understanding where your products are selling the best, and actually using this data for future stock orders with your manufacturers, and not just guessing it based upon items that you think might sell. So this means prioritizing, your stock for your best sellers, avoiding sinking cash into, unproven products or dead stock. That way you have all these numbers to hand and you know exactly which ones are driving the growth. Even when it comes to like fashion brands, this 80-20 rule is going to remain, the same. And if you start ordering items based upon what you think might sell, you're not actually looking at the numbers, it's one of the quickest ways to ruin your brand, because your target customer might want one item versus you're coming out with, multiple different items that you think might sell, but you have no data to actually prove that. So this doesn't mean that you don't stop bringing out new items. It means keeping in your core products all in stock all of the time, because that is going to drive most of your revenue. The 20% is going to be, the new products that come out that generate more interest and generate that newness within your brand. So keeping lean on slow movers, be aggressive on what actually drives these sales. And the last thing that you want is cash tied up in dead stock that you cannot shift, because you'll be discounting items and it's going to devalue your brand. So that's one of the worst things that can happen. So the next slide is the lack of back-end revenue, so weak retention. If you're only relying on new customers, your business is very fragile. So scaling becomes super expensive, unpredictable, and stressful when you constantly have to chase new customers and hit your revenue targets. The brands that break past the 200K per month don't just acquire customers, they build systems that turn buyers into repeat, loyal customers who stick around for life. So if your brand has a low LTV, meaning that customers only buy once, you've got a serious growth problem here. The best and most scalable brands are built on retention. So products with high LTV, subscriptions, all these help build the brand, because LTV fuels scale, and without it, the paid acquisition that you're using, your margin is going to be squeezed and you're always going to be fighting for that new customer. Whereas once you acquire one customer, you build that, customer for life. They're going to repeat buy whether you have, new SKUs, whether it's subscription, over and over again. And that is basically like free money. So let's actually dive onto the next slide, which is sort of the formula for this. And if you don't know this ratio, make sure you jot this down for your business. It helps you understand your LTV to CAC ratio. Lifetime value, sometimes referred to as customer lifetime value, is the average revenue from a single customer predicted to actually generate over a duration of their account. So customer acquisition cost, CAC, is the average expense of gaining a single customer. So the ratio of actually lifetime value to customer acquisition cost helps you determine how much you should be spending to acquire a customer. Calculating this ratio will show you if you're spending too much or if you're missing opportunities and not spending enough on retention and actually acquiring these customers. So let's actually dive into this into more detail. So a healthy actual benchmark for this is aiming for a 3-to-1 or higher. For an example, if you, let's say the LTV is £200, the CAC is £20, and if you go with £200 divided by 20, it's a 10-to-1 ratio, meaning that for every £1 you spend to acquire a customer, you generate an additional £10 in revenue over that customer's lifetime. And it's understanding how brands can use this to actually calculate whether they're profitable on first order, second order, or third order, and understanding that the average customer might stay for 3 months or buy 3 times over the lifetime. It's understanding how much you can then spend on acquisition platforms like Facebook to acquire a new customer and still remain profitable. So again, this is going to be for, do this even if you don't have a big budget. But again, if you are breaking even on first purchase with the understanding that you're making money on second and third, then these are going to be brands that have a bit more money to play with. But it's also key to understanding, how many times a customer is going to come back to your business. Because one of the main things is repurchase rates. And if you can spend to acquire a customer once and they come back over and over and over again, 10 times over, you have a very good business. So the next one is actually inventory management tips. So number 1, forecasting demand. Look at your sales data, the seasonality and upcoming campaigns, especially for Q4. So if you have previous sales data, make sure to go back on this data within Shopify, within your analytics, and look at what products are best selling, how much actual revenue generated, which were the core products that actually drove that revenue, and figure out this for your stock and upcoming campaigns for Black Friday and Q4. Q4 is one of the biggest all-round seasons for Ecom. So nailing this data and actually forecasting based on this data is going to allow you and set you up for, not running out of stock, for making sure that there's enough demand for that product and not overstocking on bad products that are not going to move. And then you're going to ultimately have to discount those products. So the next one is actually backup suppliers. Never actually rely on one source. Whether you have delays, quality issues, this is just going to kill your momentum. And having one supplier means that all your eggs are in one basket. If something happens, then you are out of business. So make sure to actually have a buffer of stock. So especially in Q4, it's better to hold some excess stock rather than actually lose sales. But again, not on the non-best sellers. Make sure to actually have a look. The 80-20 rule again, go back and actually figure out where the best sellers are and actually hold more excess stock of that product. So the next one you can actually do, but be cautious with this, is the pre-order and pre-sale method. We used to do this a lot with Pareil, and it was a great way to actually get cash back quicker than the actual time frame of the manufacturing, the shipping. We actually cut that lead time by a month or 2, and that is a great sort of way of actually pulling cash back in and actually predicting the demand with these actual pre-order products. So make sure to actually always look at cash flow first. Inventory ties up cash, so never actually buy beyond what your finances or sales forecast data justifies. The worst place to be, again, is excess cash tied up in inventory. It's so hard to sell, and you don't want to discount it and devalue your brand. So we just come on to the next stage, which is you are probably one of the biggest bottlenecks within your own business. And most founders, including myself, subconsciously set mental ceilings, even without actually realizing it. So if you've managed to hit, let's say for an example, it's 10K days, and those 10K days are, something which you've always set a goal on, you've dreamt to get towards, but then it feels like success to you because you never actually thought you'd actually subconsciously get there. So sometimes you'd actually do unconscious things to actually keep you there. So you stop pushing for actual growth, you avoid the risks of which you actually got to get you to that place. You get too comfortable and you resist doing the uncomfortable things that actually drive growth, whether that's hiring, key hires, whether that's spending more on ads, whether that's, improving the business overall. And comfort zones in business are very, very dangerous. They trick you into thinking you're growing when in reality you are stuck. And the truth is, if you're stuck at 50K, 100K, 200K per month, and you cannot pass that ceiling, your beliefs about money, scale, and what is possible might be the biggest bottleneck in driving you forwards. You may have a fantastic business, but you as the person who's leading the ship may have some limiting beliefs about this. And I actually ran into this with my brands. We reached a certain threshold where, you'd hit, it was a good month, but it was a good month for me. And I sort of started to look and hit like a ceiling. And you'd sort of get to this place and you'd lay off the gas a little bit. And you never seem to actually surpass that ceiling. So if you're between this mark, just make sure you recognize it and make sure you're doing the things that what actually got you to that place and you continue doing them. So I just want to say, if you found this valuable and if you are serious at breaking past the 5K to 200 month mark, I'm opening up a few direct spots to work with myself one-to-one to help you scale your own business. And there are only a few spots because you're working directly with myself. If this is something that you're interested in and you found value with this video, make sure to hit the apply button below, and I hope to actually work with yourself. There's going to be a few questions that I ask you to actually pre-qualify you because we don't just work with anyone. So go ahead, make sure to apply down below, and I look forward to working with you soon.